the March 20th.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. You can pass it, well. All right, Kurt, you're up.
I'm up.
Yep.
So Donna sent me a reminder, it said that I signed up, and it's like, I did? Okay. So I says, I'll come for a chat,
Sure, why not?
because, I usually do, so. The building department budget is level funded, we're happy with that. I know that there's some contractual increases for my administrative assistant that'll be taken care of. There's a slight increase, between the classification plan change for me, and then the 2.5% probably required raise for that. So that's pretty unremarkable. Building, just, on the income side is, seems to be holding pretty steady. We did 6 houses in March. The solar fields are still coming. Planning board's working on a revised solar bylaw that is a little more restrictive and changes it to a special permit, but there's like 5 solar fields in the wings right now that are in the permitting process from before that. There's some new stuff coming on board. It's called energy storage systems. Basically, Connex containers with lots of lithium-ion batteries in them. DOER and the SMART plan and the state government is incentivizing that. I don't know what those units cost, so what kind of income we're gonna get from them. I did see a video that Templeton Light and Power put one in and said their project was a $2.5 million project.
Where would it be?
All the ones right now are proposed on solar fields to be built.
Oh, okay.
So, there's 6 of them. We actually, we knew about it, we didn't think much about it. The solar field on Horn Homestead Road has some batteries on it. They're smaller units, they're about 5 by 5 by 8. But now the technology has moved into these Connex containers, so 8 by 8 by 40-foot containers full of lithium-ion batteries. The fire department and I have been looking at those and the hazards assigned to them and stuff, because we have been doing, stuff before. Energy storage systems are in the telephone switching buildings, and MCI, but they're lead-acid batteries, so they're an aqueous base, where the lithium ions are more metal-based, so they behave a little bit differently, but the safety systems in them and stuff are pretty high up there, so, but it is, a little bit of work and quite a bit of value.
Any industrial buildings coming on, like commercial, industrial?
Treehouse Brewery's doing their addition. Kid Power Gymnastics is building their new building out there, that long-term. There's the LNG compressor plant, liquefaction plant that's being proposed. That's probably 3-4 years out. We probably Fourscore, who is one of the marijuana growing facilities, taking over the building on Sturbridge Road that used to have vehicle outfitters in it. That process is moving through the planning board process. Not a really big dollar item, but, it's a building that already exists. But there's still interest in some facilities like that coming into town. Of course, we all know that VGG is in sort of limbo at this point, and what the viability, or how that is gonna come out of the courts, we don't really know at this point to say anything for sure, to speculate. I know that Jeff was in the other day, Jeff Sorrell, our new IT tech guy. It's been a great asset that you folks have supported IT for the town and taken most of that responsibility off my plate. And I know that there's some funding, and from listening to Robin speak, there's some additional funding in IT which we need to do, and I can't believe that years ago when I started, there was a selectman that said, you know, why do we need a computer on every desk for? All they're gonna do is play games and shop. Well, we can't live without them anymore. And I think everybody that sits on your board, you know, uses them daily in work, and there's so much that we can provide for the customers that. And likewise, we've hired the Tom LaRose, who's the facilities technician, you know, who's starting to take some of those maintenance items off and the custodial stuff. He sits on the municipal building committee with us. Jerry, you come to that meeting, you know, so I'll just put in a mention that, you know, we still have a bunch of buildings in town where we're looking at this DPW and how that plays out. Cemetery is looking for some space. Mr. Foskett is working with the architect from the highway garage to see what kind of space may be able to be created there to satisfy the cemetery's needs. The number 2 schoolhouse is sort of a forgotten building in town. We haven't done any sort of work to that for a number of years, and now the people from the historical commission that, you know, look after that building for the town have pointed out that it needs a bunch of work, and we're, you know, following up on trying to get some pricing and budgetary
Was
stuff
there a
to
problem
get.
with the bell tower on that one? Or
Not-
what they call the bell tower?
Yeah, the bell tower, I think, you know, I haven't been up there on the tower. I know a number of years ago, the fire department, and Ralph Fisk replaced the very pointy part of the top of the bell tower with AZAC so that it wouldn't rot anymore, but the building hasn't been painted in years. It's got single glazed windows in it that the putty all needs to be reputtied. There's some, you know, clapboard repairs that are gonna need to done to it, and there's some cornice work and stuff, you know, that's there, so, but it needs to be evaluated, and we need to develop some budget numbers to put in the long-term capital plan, so I'm just, you know,
Yeah.
bringing that up to you so that you folks know about that. We completed our first round of Green Communities Grant. We got about $175,000. We spent money on a new heating control system for this building, which just got finished. We'll really see the payback next year on that, being able to much better control the heat and air conditioning in the building. We, what was the other project? We insulated the roof of the police station. Police chief sitting behind me, he can probably, I heard that they feel much warmer, but one of the other benefits of that project is that we were trying to, because of the heat leakage, there were a lot of ice dam problems with that roof that were causing damage to that building. And, we replaced the boiler in the number 4 Dresser Hill with that grant money. That boiler, we sort of figure was from the 50s, so, you know.
Might be more efficient.
Might be, you know, like that. And then the competitive grants, we just were able, because we closed out those projects, apply for competitive grants for the next round of grants. So we're looking at an LED replacement project for this building, an LED retrofit project for the library, pumps and VFD controls, variable frequency control drives down at the sewer plant that they've identified. And Jerry Foskett, Jerry, you identified some monies from that too, as I recall.
Which grant?
Green Communities. Jerry talked to you, well, anyway, so.
I proposed, I haven't.
Yeah, so that is a maximum grant of $250,000. It's a competitive grant. We applied for that grant. We got some initial feedback. The cost that we put forward for this building was outside of the payback period. We quickly reached back to the vendor, who was able to identify some savings, some changes in what we would do to keep it within the allowable number for the payback period. So unfortunately, we didn't apply for the whole $250,000, but we're probably around $200,000. So any money that comes in on a grant, of course, we don't have to spend ourselves.
How about the streetlights?
Streetlights are very interesting. I was, and the municipal building committee were championing changing streetlights. We got some paperwork from National Grid that, was not very favorable. As Ms. Craver read through that document, it asked us to put forth a $5 million liability policy and another $5 million policy naming them as the additional insured, and a whole bunch of other not too favorable requirements. We did speak to some of the DOER people on that. They said, but other communities are signing it, but we did hear of a couple of communities that were sort of balking at signing that. I did happen to go to a seminar the other day and ended up sitting next to a guy from the Department of Energy and Affairs, and I mentioned that to him, and he says, huh? And he sort of steered me in a direction, but I want to make some inquiries that if the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which has a zero carbon-based fuel goal by 2050, and this would keep the utilities from having to build power plants because the LEDs are considerably more efficient, why are they putting this rather stringent, seems to be unnecessary requirement on that? But it's an area that I gotta reach up, the town needs to reach up to the secretariat level at the state, so the energy secretary and the DPU secretary maybe start talking to each other and saying, what is this utility doing? Because right now, from my perspective, they have shut the door on us providing energy savings to them, so.
Any other questions? No? I
Thank
guess
you
we're
very
all
much.
set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the latest plans, but they're, as usual, tentative. What's the first one that has anything of the building itself? Jerry, you're up. You're the new DPW superintendent? That's what they're calling you today?
That's what I am today. Who knows tomorrow? That's probably a good place to start, since it does reflect a lot of changes in this budget, as you see. With considerable amount of discussion with Robin and Board of Selectmen, they have moved towards establishing a DPW, as in most cities and towns in the state today. Personally, I resisted that for years, being the old Yankee I am, but I do see the full value of it, not just for myself and the department, for the town. I can see pulling things under the same roof and the value to that. That kind of goes to some of the things that I've inherited into my department, budget-wise and operational. And I think in the end, we're all gonna gain by this.
Now, which were the new departments you got?
Well, basically, what I've got added on as a responsibility, or whatever you'd like to call it, is the Parks and Recreation, basically, it'd be the general. But under this, it's listed as the ground unit. Basically, it's the contract oversight for all the mowing that's done in groundskeeping for the town hall and ball fields, recreational, all the other, there's many units that are involved in that mowing contract. It puts me in a position as the director or the superintendent of the DPW to oversee it in detail. I can understand how it operates. In 2 years, we have a contract renewal. We'll, at that time, decide if maybe there's a better way to do it. I'll be in a position for the next 2 years to see the operation, see the value. I mean, right now, I'm not saying that contractual isn't the way to go, but I think I'll be in a position to offer maybe an option, maybe the same thing. I mean, we'll see, but I think the oversight needed to come into my department, because I have overlapping things that happen with my retention pond upkeep and all the roadside mowing, it all kind of blends in, and it's probably a good fit.
Well, it gives you a couple of years to learn what's going on, how it works and everything too, so.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, there's always something to be picked up, but I think just my general knowledge of things as far as the contract, and I think the oversight it was in the hands of people that just had so many other things to do that it just belongs under this roof. That's basically the way I put it.
Seems logical.
Just out of curiosity, what were your reasons for resisting for all those years?
Probably financial. I mean, to be honest with you, I view a DPW as the start of something where the administration end always seems to grow bigger and more expensive, more than the actual hands-on work. That's just my view. I still believe that. I believe in 10 years, it'll be long after I leave here, I believe there'll probably be a director of the DPW, and I'm not questioning people that make these decisions moving forward, but there'll be a director, there'll be an assistant director, there'll be an administrator, they'll each have a secretary, and there'll be a bigger office space. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's the way I view it. You asked me, that's my honest answer.
That's a good answer.
I think in the economy we live in, Charlton, things seem pretty good, but I do give Robin credit. I mean, it's always spending. It's about, you gotta justify things, and I think that's a good thing. I think for now, it's not gonna happen. That's the crystal ball I look at. But that would be the answer to that.
Thank you.
As far as well, of course, that's the capital budget, but as far as, I know we hit 32 trucks. How's everything else?
Unfortunately, in the construction business, and that's really where I am with the highway end of this, is equipment is expensive. I mean, we go to all ends to keep our equipment up and, properly taken care of. One of my main pieces of equipment is my Gradall. It's a 1997. I'm not sure of the hours, somewhere in the 7,000 hour range, but it's highly utilized for us. It's getting old. I'm not saying I'm coming to ask for a new Gradall. They're a $200-and-something thousand piece of equipment, but it's a challenge. I mean, we got a new backhoe. I wanted to say a couple years ago, but it's probably been 5. Time goes by, these things get worn out. We do a lot of work ourselves. Contracting isn't, the best way on a lot of work that we do, the road reconstruction work. We do a lot on our own, so but overall, our capital is, with the purchase of a week ago or 2 days, we're in much better shape, I can say that. The cost of operations is a challenge. I was very reluctant up until the purchase of the new vehicles that my account for maintenance was probably not gonna be enough, because we're just getting into that. Every time we go for a part, it's not $180 anymore, it's $300, it's $400, we all know, but, so it's a challenge.
How are you
But,
doing on the cemetery? Working with the cemetery and bringing them in, getting the estimates and,
Well, I'm working with, a guy from Jeff Alberti. He actually did the highway garage. And so he has a real in-depth knowledge of what's going on in that building. We're looking at the possibility of a small addition to take care of the cemetery's needs for a garage, which I totally understand. I see how he operates. There's a need there. If it's something that we can incorporate into that building down there, I think it actually goes towards maybe the long-range planning where a real, true DPW will be utilized, and the cemetery will be part of that. So it only makes sense that somehow now we can get it tucked into that building if it's possible. I see the possibility of it, but it's always gonna be the money.
yeah.
So we'll see. I don't have anywhere near close to a number to put in front of you for that yet, but he's working on it, and that's,
That's a good question, be the general condition of the roads.
this has been a tough winter. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not happy with a lot of the roads' conditions, but I don't control the weather, the frost, the freeze, the refreeze, it beat up the roads pretty bad. I think over the past 10 to 15 years, the money that we put into road reconstruction rather than just, you know, that old system of oiling or the chip sealing, I think it's been a great thing to save our roads and kind of move along the process, but it buys time. But again, that's a big challenge.
You've
Having
got a lot of
money.
roads.
There's a lot of roads, everybody wants theirs done. And if I had ever had a better time to put this out, the private road issue in this town is probably one of my biggest challenges. I probably bring this up every year I meet with you guys. It's a case where they're some of the worst roads in town, and I can't use the Chapter 90 funds to do it. So I'm forced to use my road repair. It's minimal. It's you know, it's $100,000. It's a lot of money, but yet you start trying to fix up a road that's a half mile long. It's just a real challenge to the public to say that it's not there. I try, I keep it up with coal patch. I'm using a lot of these grindings now. I'm trying to roll them in and trying to make we're gaining a little bit, but, you know, that's just my plug for the people that live on these private roads. They have a legitimate concern. I really wish somehow there could be a waiver of that Chapter 90 rule that doesn't allow you to use it. I'm not gonna sit here and say anything other than the fact that these people deserve better than what they're getting. And it's out of my hands. But I do think they deserve this plug for them.
Robin, is there any way to get money for the private roads, even from the people on the private roads?
Well, what you have in the budget tonight is for next year is an additional $25,000. I think last year you funded it at $75,000, this year you're funding it at $100,000. Certainly, as we're able to get more economic development, we'll be able to increase that number, and that certainly is, as Jerry says, a priority.
Jerry, have you ever
And if
looked at,
I can just add one more piece. You know, we're very fortunate with the new water line that's going in with Exxon, which will be providing another 8+ miles of new pavement that we will not be paying for,
So we can cut the
that is
budget.
good. Jerry,
That's the police department.
Oh, that's the police department, all right.
Jerry should be able to give you a timeline on that also as they're moving forward.
Yeah, all the roads for the Exxon project are supposedly gonna be paved by the end of next year's paving season.
2020?
The Old Worcester Road, Morton Station, Mugget Hill, L. Stevens Road, Masonic Hill Road.
Major roads.
All these, and it's major, and they're gonna be all done the way I prefer, the way it should be done. That's something that we all worked on with the Mobile Exxon beginning, right? There's been a lot of they're gonna be doing them right. That's why there's a hold off to do them this year. We need to wait to let them settle. But also the Casella project over on the other end of town at the Barefoot Berry Corner. That's a major improvement for roads that really need it. So the town is really winning in that regard, and the amount of money, I never really sat down and estimated what the cost would be for the town to do these roads, but I can assure you that it's a major windfall for this town and a benefit in the total road condition package.
So they'll be done in the fall of 2021?
2021, that would be,
Okay, just,
be for the Exxon, the Casella project on the other side of town is supposedly gonna be done by this October, completed. The main lines will be in most of the services, so then I'll allow them to do the paving, the reclaim and paving. It's not gonna just be overlaid or patches, it's gonna be done correctly, hopefully for the long term.
it'll make it a little easier for the plowing, won't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody wins with this new asphalt. The police will get much busier with the speed. That's the downfall. You know, that's what I
More
hear.
revenue.
I paved many roads in town and they've come to me, is there any way you can put a speed bump up now? You know, they complained for years for potholes, now they want a speed bump, but it's legit. Speed picks up, that's the downfall. But Robin was correct in bringing that up. That's a major windfall for this town when these are done.
Jerry, have you ever looked at the possibility, or is it even possible that you can lease some of this heavy equipment so that every 5 years you're just giving it back and getting a new piece?
No, I haven't. short, honest answer. I have not looked into a lease package.
Yeah.
Alls I can say is, just quickly answering, with maybe the negative part of that program would be, it's a lease package, there'd probably be a constant pay every month or however it was funded to pay it. I've got a 19, as I said, a 97 Great All. I've got a 2010 Loader. We own them. I mean, I would believe that purchase is the way to go. I mean, I would be open to any program that would allow us to get new equipment, but straight up, I would say maybe a lease purchase type thing might work, but no, I have never looked into the,
Well, the only reason I suggested, I mean, I use it myself because some of my equipment I beat up on, and after 5 years, it's not worth it. And then your maintenance costs become more than, and the ability at the end of 5 years, get a brand-new piece, and you're always running good equipment. It's just something you may want to explore, that's all I'm asking.
I agree. I'm willing to explore anything, and I will look into that.
Well, basically, I think what you're saying is that the maintenance fees for the older equipment is less than the lease fees would be for the same equipment.
Based on what I'm running right
Yeah.
now, and in all honesty, one of my major things is to keep equipment up, to keep it well greased, well oiled, take care of it, you know, the way it's operated. I mean, you can ask my staff, you operate it in a manner in which you may own it yourself. That's important,
Yeah.
and they all do. I can't say enough about my staff, another plug, but
Yeah.
the guys I got down there and the amount of work that they do is really incredible. I have
But
to just
I know
add
that
that.
there are packages out there now where you can lease with maintenance agreements, and all you're responsible for is tires and oil,
And the
yeah,
monthly payment,
and the,
and the monthly payment.
and the monthly payment, right.
Just-
But, you know, to work the
I
numbers out
hear
and
you.
say, hey.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Thank
Something to
you.
look at.
Yep,
Yeah, so something to look at and
absolutely.
take a look. Is that for everybody, or?
Oh, I only promised my friend once.
Any other questions for Gary?
So, as part of this DPW, does that mean that you take on other employees, the people move from other departments to your department?
At this stage, basically, I'm taking over the contract for the mowing. That would be like more staff, but yet it's under contract. I have more responsibilities to oversee that, as well as the tree, and make no mistake, we do still have a tree warden, and he does a very good job. The way we've set it up between the tree warden and the DPW, he's very happy with it, works. So I think we've improved that situation. Someday, that may be a part of the DPW officially handling every situation. Employees could do that work possibly. We all know how a DPW grows in good ways, not just the bad ways that I talked about earlier. That's all.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
With respect to the private roads, I understand the budget situation where it is. Is there any plan? How bad are some of them? What are the worst ones? Is there a long-term plan to try to do with the money you have, or is it totally reactive?
I would have to put them in a status of reactive right now, and it's because of the financial constraints that I have. I have to react to issues on these private roads. I try to be proactive, but in reality, proactive would just consist of paving, reconstructing paving, drainage improvements. There's not money there for that. It's just not there. You know, you take $100,000, which is an increase, that's great, but along with my normal buying of coal patch every year and other things that come out of that account, it's not there. So the short answer, yes, it's reactive. It's based on phone calls and complaints. We write them every day. We try to be proactive, and that would include coal patch and temporary fixes. There's not a lot more I can do that,
Are there any of them that could be ready to be taken into public roads?
excuse me?
Are any of the private roads in good enough condition to be taken in?
The procedure to take a private road and turn it into a public way is almost impossible on most of these private roads because of the layout. They have to meet specs of a subdivision that would be applied for today. So the improvements needed probably aren't even possible on most of them. They're too narrow. They're owned by the people that live on them. These are private roads. The word really means private. They own them. We have to have, every 5 years, we have a program to get their permission to even do the plowing and the basic upkeep that we do now. That, you know, they need to sign them, and if I don't get 51% of the signatures on a private road, we actually can't go on them. So that'd be another thing. I have discussed with the past planner what they've done in some of the biggest cities to try to address private roads and have the people living on them ante up into a, you know, quickly said it'd be an amount of money would be put on the project to reclaim or to bring a road up to spec. The number would be divided by the amount of residents. The town would agree, similar to the dams that I think go on now. They would borrow the money. It'd be a tax on them added to their taxes. The trouble with that program is you need 100% participation. And I can tell you that that's not gonna happen. I actually have some people that live on private roads that don't sign into the program for us to do the basic maintenance on them. They're just, that's their way they are, and I'm not questioning them, I'm just saying that that's one of the things I have looked in the past, and it just wasn't a feasible thing to do. I mean, believe me, I hear a lot from these people, and it puts me in a bind because it's the same answer. I'd like to help them out. Financially, it's not
What's your
there.
estimate of how many miles of private roads we have?
8.335, I think, is the amount. That's exact, just about.
And what's the cost today of putting in a public road the right way?
Well, in my
Linear
estimation,
foot.
let's just take a Cranberry Meadow Shore Road. Right now, it's a gravel road. The trouble with working near the waters, which most of these private roads are, is they're on water. Now you're on water, I think. I'd go see him first. First thing, conservation. Yeah, more than M&Ms too. The drainage would be massive. You can't even pitch a road towards the water. Everything would have to be, we're talking a large amount of money to do a lot of these, and a lot of them are shore drives, so I would hate to throw a number out here arbitrarily, but it's big.
Any other questions?
If it were plausible, it probably isn't legal, do you think it'd be an improvement if some of the heavy truck use could be restricted on some of those private roads for the costs that end up coming back to you, having a cold patch up against ice?
Well, I think we have a gentleman in this room now that's probably better suited to answer this, the police chief. But I'll give you my view on it, which I've looked into many times. You don't limit the travel of any vehicle that's registered and legally on that road unless there's a logical reason why, and usually the only one around here would be a bridge weight limit. We don't have them. Very rare are they. I don't know of any in town that have a weight limit. So another question would come up, who do we say can't go on these roads? The trash haulers? The guy bringing you oil? I don't know. It's a tough
It's
question.
a hypothetical question.
No, it's very hypothetical, and the answer is just, I've been round and round with that. I don't think I believe that would not be an option. My eye.
I guess my last question would be, how are we doing with Hilka's Bridge? Or the town's bridge by Hilka?
I'll take a deep breath. Seriously, it's moving along, it's coming along very well. The contract, I've talked to him this week, we're hoping to get him back. The major reason for the shutdown this past winter was guardrails were not made at this point. They weren't fabricated. It would have put us into January, and so we just held off until now. We're looking for probably 6 weeks. Starting April 1st, they'll be on duty down there doing the minor drainage work, paving, getting the railings up. And I can't tell you, that won't be soon enough for me
Me either.
or you, and I know many people that want to see that open. June 30th is the target contractual date. I can guarantee it done by then. I'm hoping more the middle of May to open that road up.
Very good. Any further questions? Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, folks.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Thanks. You Okay. Oh, okay, all right, thanks.
Is that what you did there?
I didn't bring any ducks. Todd's got me beat on that.
You lose.
Oh, that one goes with that one. Yeah, you're on.
I don't know if you, do you have the breakdown? I usually like to,
Yeah.
oh, okay, all right, great. You're way ahead of me.
It's Donna. Yeah.
So, as you can see, we've had a little bit of an increase to last year, several reasons for that. Contractual salary increase, addition of the full-time traffic officer. There was also some adjustments to calculate longevity into the overtime. They call it normalized overtime. Shift differential increased a little bit. The union also negotiated full Quinville benefits. That was an increase. Several of the officers have hit step increases. We've also done a more accurate accounting of overtime. When I took over, one of the tasks that I was given by the selectmen was to make sure that I used the technology available in the building. And so working with Donna, we broke down sick time coverage, vacation coverage, all of that. And now we have about a year and a half worth of that in the system that tells us pretty well how much we spend a week in overtime, and I can go through that with you. Also, the additional training monies you'll see in this budget. For many years, we weren't doing what was required of us, that the state mandates for us. We are doing that now because of liability reasons, obviously. So that's where you see the largest increase also in training. And we also started a school resource officer this past year, and there's an overlap. The school picks up 10 months of the salary, and you'll see it reflected here down in number 9 on the first page. That salary, $12,000. The school picks up 10 months of that salary. We have to pick up the overlap of a couple of months there, so.
And if I remember correctly, that was gonna help you in summer vacations and all the rest of it.
Yes, so we haven't hit that yet. We're just kind of moving into the end of the school year. It has helped us, during February and April vacations, storm coverage and stuff like that. When school is canceled, we pull that body and put it on the street, to help with accidents and that kind of thing, so. So, it's pretty self-explanatory as we go officer to officer down the list, and the differentials and the holidays, it's all broken down by hourly, weekly, and annual costs. The second page, and this is again, talking about technology, sick time coverage last year, if you look to the left of the account number, that was the number that we had last year. We're at 8 units a week. We've actually reduced that to 6 units a week, down to $15,951. So far, I've spent this year, as of today, about $11,000 in sick time to this point, from July 1st till now. So we're pretty much on target. We're pretty comfortable with that number, that's where we're gonna land. So vacation coverage, we went from 10 units last year up to 11 units again, what I've spent up till today, about $20,600. So, moving over to, 29,000, that's again what we project, that's where we're gonna land, for next year. Shift coverage, that's anything else other than vacation and sick time. For instance, training, somebody goes to training, we have to replace that person. The dispatchers, when they have open shifts, when they take time off by contract, it has to go to a full-time dispatcher first. Somebody takes a personal day, floating holiday, any extra patrols, any holdovers, that's where this comes. So you'll see the largest increase here. We were at 8 units a week last year, and we're up to about 14. And what I've spent so far this year, as from July 1st till today, about $27,000. So again, we're pretty much on target, because we get heavy in the months of May and June, because that's, people don't want to take vacation in January and February. So it's kind of on a sliding scale, it's weighted heavy in the last couple of months of the fiscal year. Overtime, so it's kind of a mixture. I know it's a large increase, so we broke it down to 3 categories: sergeants, officers, and dispatchers. Last year, we had 9 units a week. We dropped that down to 6, because that's where we are. That's where we've been the last year and a half. For officers, we went up from 9 units to 11 units a week, and the dispatchers, we went from 8 units down to 6. That's probably because we hired a 4th dispatcher that you authorized last year when I was in front of you. So we're at about $40,000 for the year right now in overtime, which is over what our budget is. We have money, to cover it, so we'll be moving some things before the end of the year, but we I won't be back asking you for any. One of the things, we had the school resource officer's salary in our budget already, and then the school decided to do the program, so we had that extra 10 months of salary that was sitting there, so it allowed us to cover this. Moving to the next category, training wages. So, again, a significant increase, and as I said earlier, we're now doing what we're required to do by the state. CPR, first aid, TASER, 2 firearms programs. We also introduced a RAD program. I was in front of you with Robin last year to get the equipment, and the first class was very successful. I won't tell you who the town administrator punched out the most in that program, but pretty self-explanatory. We also had to account for the specials and part-time officers in service training. We're required to provide that for them, and we never had money to do that, so that accounts for the increase. Court time, we dropped that from 10 units last year a week to 6 units. So that's, as of this year, as of right now, today, I've spent $10,000, from July 1st till now. That's going to increase as the traffic officer becomes more active. He goes to court a lot more because people appeal the tickets and that kind of thing. So, but we thought that was a pretty reasonable number of where we think we're gonna land. And, that may increase a little bit, but, it's been pretty consistent, the last several months, so. And the last one is, the utilities on that page. Pretty much, that's pretty much standard year to year. The next page, training special services. We were cut a little bit last year. All the categories here, firearms, TASER, Semlec is the regional SWAT team. That's what it costs to have an officer. The MPI is our in-service training, online in-service training fee. It's standard, we pay per officer. CPR and RAD are new this year, just covering the cost of giving those classes. Am I going too fast? There's nobody's interrupting me. So expenses, we've been able to reduce many of them. We cut out West Thompson Publishing, it was about $4,800. We're just doing it online rather than getting the hard copies of the books. The tires we were able to eliminate because the cruisers now, you've given me 3 cruisers the last couple of years. That's kind of modernized our fleet a little bit, so we haven't, we're not running all the cruisers as much, so we don't use as many tires, so we were able to take about $1,900 off of that. The mobile wireless in the cruiser, FirstNet, allowed us to do about a $2,000 savings from last year. FirstNet is a program through AT&T that Ed Davis, the former commissioner of Boston, he's heavily involved in that. After the Marathon bombing, what they discovered was that the cell towers would get overloaded and nobody would be able to make calls, so they couldn't talk to each other, and other than by radio. So they came up with this system that's at a discount rate to municipalities and public safety professionals. And it's cheaper. We get priority on the towers during any type of high volume event. We have a mass casualty incident or anything. All of our mobile data terminals, our cell phones, all of that, they take priority on any of the towers. And again, it's cheaper than the other company that we were using, so we were able to save $2,000 there. Our cable bill, we were paying too much, so we renegotiated that, down $350. Our office supplies, we were able to reduce that about $600. Prisoner meals and expenses, we're not keeping people anymore. They're bailing more and more people, I mean, every once in a while. The jail Worcester County House of Correction is actually building a facility. They've been building it for years and years, but they've actually poured the concrete, and so we'll be able to house people there over the weekend so that we don't have to pay extra people overtime to watch prisoners all weekend waiting for court on Monday or Tuesday if it's a holiday. So we were able to reduce that. Then you move into the contracts. IMC is our software license that we have to pay every year. Integration is the 911 software. CrossMatch is our fingerprint, automatic fingerprint system. We were able to renegotiate that contract down a few $100s. Rico, we just bought a new copy machine, so we got a service contract. Enforce Technology, that's the, you may have read it in the paper, the programs that we have in the mobile data terminals and at school. So if we go to some type of incident at school, we can communicate with the educators and the people at the school. It also provides plans of the building and entry points and that kind of thing. So Dudley Charlton has signed on to that, Bay Path has signed on to that, so that was our portion. We had an increase, I'm sorry, in Enforce, we had CopSync. CopSync was too expensive, so we all decided on Enforce. It was $600 savings there. Taser International, we're up about $700 in that because the traffic officer and the school resource officer, I had to provide them with tasers to go out on the street, not just the 4 that we used that the patrol guys rotate through every shift. So there was an increase there. We had to buy a couple of more, and we buy those on a lease, and they get, we pay them per year, and then at the end of 4 or 5 years, we get brand new ones. So it works out the best because they're expensive and they have a tendency to break. That's about it for expenses. The only other thing, uniform allowance, we had an item for the dispatchers. that was cut last year, and we added that back in this year just to keep them in professional appearance, uniforms, shirts and that kind of thing when the public comes in. So we asked for that to be put back in. So with that, this budget represents about $130,000 cut from what we asked for, but, we're confident that, these numbers are solid and we'll be able to get the job done within these parameters, so.
I guess my question probably hangs, how are we doing on the off-duty, not off-duty, but the, what is it?
Road work.
Road work
Detail.
and the details, that's it, the
Details. Yes, okay. So the first thing I did when I was chief is that I redid the policy, and I think I reported to you all that last year. And with my administrative assistant, we were able to collect about $180,000 that was years old. Unfortunately, the town, we had to go to the town meeting and write off about $109,000, and that zeroed that out. So every other dime since I've been chief that we've billed has been collected. Nobody owes us. Anybody goes past 30 days, I take them to court, and I haven't had to. So, but we have a very rigid, strict policy. Mara Jackson, my admin assistant, was excellent. You don't want to owe her money. She will hound you to the end of the earth. But there is no issue with it. We have a great system. I do not allow our auxiliaries to work out of town. That was a lot of cause of the problem, because you're talking about we're billing, sending another town a bill, and you have to wait for them, and then they send it back and all that. It just became too complicated, and the town doesn't benefit by our officers working out of town. Our town doesn't get anything, for that, whereas the town gets a percentage now. When an officer works, we charge a fee. The town charges an administrative fee, and for cruisers, we don't get that if the guys work out of town, so I don't allow it.
You alluded earlier that in years past, we have not met every state mandate for police officers. This budget covers everything that that we have to be up to speed.
Everything that I'm aware of. The biggest thing is the firearms. We were deficient for many years in the firearms, but we've done everything that we're required to do. And last year, you'll see that there was an entry for equipment. We had holsters that were 20 years old. They weren't safe. Taser holsters that, didn't have the proper security level, so we had to buy those. But we continue to upgrade our equipment, but as far as everything that the state requires us to do, CPR, first responder, taser, all of our firearms, day shoot, night shoot, all of that, we're doing.
Good. Any other questions for the chief?
I have one,
Go
Mr.
for
Chair.
it.
Chief, you said this represents a $130,000 cut from what you requested. What were the areas that were reduced?
One of them is the full salary for the school resource officer, but we do have a commitment from Bay Path now that, so that represented about 60,000, I believe, about $60,000. The rest of it came mostly, we cut out the part-time hours. So we promoted one of the individuals. The other individual that was part-time went to another community, so there was about $22,000 there for part-time officers, so we took that out. But essentially, we cut overtime, and I think what as we see this number grow, much like when we hired the fourth dispatcher, our call volume continues to increase every year, between 2,000 and 3,000 calls, call for service. Actually where somebody calls and we have to actually go. The town's getting busier, and I'm holding guys over more. I'm having to call guys in more. I'm having to put extra patrols on things, and so we're getting to a point where we're gonna have to talk about, we're paying, like the dispatcher, $60,000 or $70,000 for a $50,000 to $1,000 job, and we're rapidly approaching that. So probably next year, I'm going to be asking for more people because two people just doesn't do it anymore on the street. We're just too busy. And as soon as they open the marijuana shop down on the end of Masonic Home Road, and when they turn the water on, we get 3,000 cars a day for Treehouse. That LNG plant, when that goes in, increased traffic. We're just, we're seeing, we're growing. So we're gonna need people to keep up. So, so that's basically where it is, mostly overtime.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Go
one
right
last
ahead.
question. So, given the impending opening of the marijuana shop at Masonic Hill, do we feel we have sufficient overtime if needed? Or would we charge the business?
Well, I would submit that they would be responsible to pay for the officers, because I know initially, my colleague in Leicester, when that opened, I mean, for the first several weeks, there was 150 people in line when that place was open, and they had to bring in porta potties and had like 5 or 6 detail officers in the parking lot, and they were busing people in, and so I think initially, they're gonna have to fund some, detail officers to be there to sort of manage. I don't know if they have, sufficient parking on that site that's going to hold the volume, at least for the first several weeks. So there is a plan in place that they're going to bus some people in, but, again, we're still gonna have to have some of our people there, so, but that burden will be on them. But what I'm talking about is the long-term, people leaving out of there. They wanna go to McDonald's, they wanna go to Treehouse, they wanna go, you know what I mean? It's just the increased volume of traffic and whatever associated problems that you have with people hanging around, kind of thing. So, it's coming. It's coming, so.
Any other question?
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Chief.
You guys let me off easy today. Gee. Thank you.
And I think the planning board's next. If you want a chair, we'll get another chair down for you.
No, you're fine. I have, my voice carries. Yeah, but I need to be very short anyway, so there you go.
Could you give your names just so she can pick them up?
Patsy Ridlack.
Chair. Jean Vincent. Alicia Jeek. D as in David, C as in zebra, okay.
You're on.
Okay, so it's funny, I've never even been to one of these budget meetings before, so we're asking for an increase in stipends because we are the lowest paid board in the building, and we are supposed to have a stipend committee study, but I don't even think they had one meeting. We work, when I looked at the amount of hours that we actually meet our board, it's pretty much double what everybody else meets, the amount of meetings we've had over the year.
We've had a
So-
tough year.
Yeah, we had. But we've always been a very busy board, and we're looking at what water and sewer made, and their stipends are $1,200 and ours are $200. So we did request that just out of fairness and,
So they get, what, 1,200 each a year?
Yep.
And you get 200 each a year?
correct.
Okay, just so I understand.
And it was decreased a couple of years ago because of budgets, but it's kind of embarrassing how little we actually get. And we all go to training every year, we're on all these extra committees. It's hard to attract good talent with that stipend, so.
Robin, is that committee working or moving along at all?
Last I heard that they might be trying to aim for fall.
And Jean is actually on that committee,
Oh,
on a
okay.
board, and did you have one meeting?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not even one,
Okay,
so.
alright.
I noticed that our planning director salary went down to 78,000. It was voted at town meeting last year to be at 92,970. That is what it was in FY '18. We're
But that
currently.
included the economic development part as well as the planning director.
Right, and that's what they voted at town meeting, was the 92,970. I just want
For
to
both.
level fund it and keep it the same thing it was in FY '18. We're gonna need that salary to hire a new planner, where we will be advertising soon for that.
Will the new planning director be both jobs or just planning director?
That decision will be made later. I mean, our planning director, even our consultant attends those EDC meetings.
Okay.
The ad we've always run has included both.
The planning director by design does EDC functions, and what we decided is that there's no real clear distinction between the two. They're going to probably do about 15% EDC work, they'll probably do about 85% planning work, so rather than have two different positions and be able to attract a lesser person for the EDC role at that pay stipend that would be a 15%, to combine the two positions in a soft way, because again, just by the pure nature of the position, they are going to do both, and up the stipend, and that's what was decided at town meeting, which is why the more
Has the
$100.
Board of Selectmen agreed to have the combined?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right.
My understanding was that they, the agreement between the planning board, the finance committee, and the board of selectmen was to have a planner come on board, at least for the first 6 months, and then take a look at what the capacity is as the EDC director. And my understanding at town meeting was that the planning board said, we're not sure how much we're gonna need to hire a planner, and that the 92 was moved into that so that they would be able to actually attract and get a planner without the CDC component.
And if I remember right,
EDC.
the pay grade covered enough range for that to work, right?
It did.
Yeah.
And the reason that it was lowered was that they had appointed someone, and I was informed that this was the salary that they were supposed to be at. And then I do believe that after a period of time, they would receive another, I think, $5,000, and we had planned on adding that in the fall. But my understanding is that the planner that they appointed did not accept the position, so. I have told, I think it was Patsy, that right now there is 78,000 in there. I think the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee has certainly been consistent in saying whatever it is that you need, just find one and we will make sure that you get that salary. If you wanna adjust it now before town meeting, you could do that. And that might be helpful because it sends a message to planners out there that there's money available. So there may be a strategy to do that, since they're having difficulty. We certainly had that as an issue with trying to get an excellent finance director. We had carried a certain number. In negotiations, we realized to get her to come here, we needed to increase it. The Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen both supported that. So from everything that I've heard from the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, they also support whatever, if they find a planner, that the salary will be there regardless of what this number is.
All right.
And
Okay.
I will just add another piece, that I do agree with Alicia, that there are EDC components, so, whether it's called the EDC director, I think that's less of an issue versus saying that the planner would certainly be someone that will interact with the EDC, and whatever we do for our staffing in that, is a discussion that I think all three boards had talked about kicking down the road.
Yeah, I think as far as we're concerned, if the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board come up with an agreement, then we don't have a problem.
But wasn't one of the issues last year that the planning board classification called for a salary schedule of between this and this, right?
Oh,
That
yes.
hasn't changed though, right?
And that's why we had to take it to town meeting, because of the
Right,
classification.
Right, because and that was the reason.
That's correct.
That we said, all right, now
That's
this is
correct.
what it said.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
And our con-
classification change, I know, all I remember now at the town meeting, the classification was big enough to take the range you needed.
And our biggest
So-
concern is that these budgets are, they're open knowledge, they're public knowledge. So if you have a planner that's thinking of applying, they're not gonna put themselves on the line and potentially lose their job at their current town for a job that on paper only pays out at X, Y, Z. So we're hoping that, to Robin's point, we're going to pay the planner what they need to be paid, but we'd like it to have enough in the budget to make it attractive in case they're looking for that.
What happened to the one that turned you down?
They decided, from the best of our knowledge, that there was too much strife in town. So clearly, a good Google search had not been done previous to applying for the position.
Gotcha, okay.
All right, I can understand
Yep.
the problems we're having, so,
Yep.
moving on.
The admin assistant, it's really a union
The same.
Yeah, that's a
so-
contract.
Right, so, planning studies. We were, we need to update our zoning bylaws. They are ancient, there's all new types of businesses that we don't even list. Our zoning map, is just absolutely, you've seen our problems. So we were hoping to get, the whole redo over the next 2 years. Estimates have shown about $100,000 to complete that project. We are working with CMRPC to do some diagnostics that should help take down the cost, but we truly believe, and we had some estimates there that ranged really from 75 to 150. So we would ask for 50 for this budget year, and then maybe 50 for next.
And this would update all our, well, depending what town
Yes.
meeting, but I mean, this would update all our zoning rules and everything else.
It's
Yeah,
a
I-
must, it's,
I would agree, I've only been in town 12 years, but the amount it's changed from roughly 2005 to now
Oh,
is
yes.
tremendous. And in the next 5 or 10 or 15 years, there's gonna be a lot more changes and
and
beyond
we've
that.
been doing some small little fixes, but it really needs, an attorney to sit there and make sure everything is, legal. And again, there's a lot of instances where their companies just didn't exist the last time the bylaw was updated.
As an example, marijuana by itself, between the cultivation, the grow, the distribution, has so many different components to it that could be its own zoning, I mean, it could have its very own zoning just for it, not to mention everything else, so.
And we've
It's
seen
outdated.
on the map
Oh, yeah.
itself, I mean, I think where it shows 85% agricultural, and even how many working farms do we even actually have? So really, that
Yeah.
has to be analyzed, and a lot of that should probably be zoned residential.
Well, it's even like along Route 20, almost everything along Route 20 should be commercial, industrial,
Yes.
business, whatever phrase that works out to be,
Exactly.
because that's where it is. And
Exactly.
if you go down to Auburn, or even the Sturbridge, or even farther east, it's all commercial, industrial along
Well-
there, or business, whatever.
Exactly, and the problem with agricultural zoning is it has so many loopholes in it, and so to protect the abutters from some of these loopholes, so they don't get a type of business there that they really don't want, to have someone actually study that, it just protects the entire town from proper zoning and puts things where they should be.
Well, I agree, if we have new zoning that keeps us away from legal
Exactly.
ramifications, that would be a good thing.
Absolutely.
To Robin, because this is a product we're developing that has a shelf life of longer than 3 years, is this a capital budget?
I just asked for Andy the budget, so we have it in the capital plan
It is.
based on the request of the interim planner, Bill Scanlon.
Okay.
So, what was requested is the zoning bylaw recodification for 50,000 this year, which would be in
In
October.
a capital, okay.
And then, master plan they have for the following year, 100,000.
Yep.
I do know that there has been some questions about which should go first, whether or not they should be doing the master plan and actually looking at where we wanna go, and then do the zoning based on that versus doing the zoning first, but I think that's a conversation you guys can have, come October and then fall.
But bottom line, it's not an operating,
No, sir,
Right.
this would be in the fall.
Okay, and we've discussed that, and we know how important the master plan is also, but on a daily basis, we need to use the zoning bylaws to make decisions, and so as fun as the master plan is, I'm sure many of you remember, how, everybody got into a room it was truly enjoyable coming up with ideas for the future. We really need the
nuts and
bylaws,
bolts.
and then
Yeah.
we can always tweak them after, during the master plan, when if, some great ideas come up and we have to kind of move things around, we can, we could do that ourselves, but we have to really get those bylaws up to date. The other item that we were hoping to get a legal line item in our budget. There's been, lots of issues in town. The planning board needs an attorney, we need a land attorney. I think as a board, we should be able to, vote for legal expenses to get legal help on our decisions.
Is anything like that in the budget, or? It would be technically under the town's legal budget?
It is.
The water and sewer has their own legal line item. So we would just like the same consideration that they have.
Just theirs is an enterprise budget, which is different than our operating budget.
But we've seen the issues that have happened in town with legal, and the planning board really does need its own legal. And if we can't get it budgeted, we would like you to create a line item for it.
And what was the number you were?
We would be happy with 10,000.
Okay.
Can I ask the question? Are you thinking that this is legal assistance on your, kind of like a consultant on your site plans, or are you talking about legal as far as kind of what you've been having conversations with going to defend cases in court? There's been some controversy over who has authority to actually approve that and make settlements with the town, on behalf of the town.
Yeah.
So however you do it, I think it would be important that everyone's clear on what the legal
To define it,
components are.
right.
Yeah, I can see where you'd need legal technical assistance to work on the planning plans.
Sure.
As far as going to court, that's probably a town function.
I mean, I feel that if we make a decision, we should automatically have defense for that decision. We're elected officials, and we shouldn't have to ask anybody to provide a counsel to defend our legal decisions.
I understand.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so I have a separate question on the legal fund. How do you today, if you need to ask a question of an attorney, separate from a review that you're going through, how is that funded today?
We send an email to the town administrator with the question, and the question is forwarded to town council or whatever. We just feel that, I said, as an elected board, we could, it's not like we would be sending random questions and spending down our budget. We're a conservative board. But in those instances, we shouldn't have to ask permission or have a question vetted to.
Really just takes out the middleman. The other piece of that, and I'm not sure if you would even include it or not include it, but we, as I'm sure you've heard, recently we went a couple of months without representation after being sued individually. We were being sued individually as a planning board, but we were still named individually. And because we had to go through the Board of Selectmen, for whatever reason, it took a couple months to allow them to name us an attorney. And that's disconcerting. It should have been almost immediate. As soon as we had the lawsuit, the attorney should have been named. What we're trying to do is avoid any such headache in the future. And again, I'm not throwing stones. I don't know why that happened, but it happened, and our goal simply is to avoid it in the future.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Oh, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. And it's getting late, so we can skip conservation?
Yeah, we're gonna let Old Home Day go first. I'll go with these guys first.
Oh, you want to do the Old Home Day first? Okay.
Yeah, no
All
problem,
right.
and they're gonna be quick. Mike's taking it.
And you're not going to be?
That's the inference.
Yes.
Because I work so much with Old Home Day and I do some of their events at Old Home Day, I'm gonna abstain from this this particular item?
All right, you're up.
Darn it, I wanted a friendly face on it. Good evening. My name is Mike Lally, and I've been working with Old Home Day for about 15 years. And we've had a lot of struggles to keep it going, to pull it together. It almost disappeared at one point. The town, some years back, used to fund the whole thing. Then it dropped out and dropped down and dropped down to where we're getting $500 a year. Now, Old Home Day has been ongoing for 120 years, and it's become a very endearing part of Charlton. People we meet, they come back, they've been away, and they look forward to this event. And subsequently, costs have escalated. We have the fireworks that run us $8,000. That was way more than the whole thing was going back a few years ago. Now, it is I would like to see the town give us a setup so that we can go out and plan and get the equipment and the bands that we need for our Old Home Day and be able to plan proactively rather than waiting for the donors that do come across, and some of them have gone back on their donations recently. So it's a constant seesaw. And the other thing is, I was very active with the EDC for about 20 years. I resigned about 2 months ago. And gone back a few years ago, I had a heart attack. And I've changed my energies, and I have to make some adjustments. But I love Old Home Day. I love the volunteerism that this town shows, and we pull it together. But I have been involved in getting the finances for the last number of years, and I've even had to carry a golf club around with me to threaten a few of them, but they've come across. But I will not be able to sustain this. So I would like the town to maybe give us a base operation fund of $10,000. And we can go from there, and then we got a lot of young people in now, and I would like to continue helping, but I know that my abilities to be out there and chasing down the donors and is limited, and other things that come in my life that I have to attend to.
Is the $10,000 including the fireworks, so that you would have, you'd know the fireworks was covered and another $2,000 for other things?
Yes, and then we continue to try and supplement it and build up a base.
And how much has a typical Old Home Day cost over the last 2
12
years?
to 15,000
12 to
approximately.
15 for the day? And you would continue to go out and get donations?
I will try, as long as I can, I will do that, but that's about to change, I think, and so I'm just being proactive here and getting to you folks.
Just want to compliment Mike on the effort he's done in the last few years that I've been on it. He's raised quite a bit of money, and the Old Home Day is quite lucky that he's been there to raise that kind of money.
Yeah, that's because you've never been on the other end of the golf club.
Thank you, Joe.
Any other questions? Old Home Day?
So, do you, from sponsorships that you've raised from last year, do you have any left over, that you have a fund already?
There's some left in the, I don't know, probably 6,000 or something. But that's not enough for us to go out and hire bands and, and we have lost also 2 very important people. James Pervier, who put his heart and soul into the Everything Charlton, and Kathy Keel. They used to plan all of the Old Home Day activities. But now we've got newer, younger people in, and it'd be nice to have a financial base that we can go out and work and set up and plan. And then if I can augment that, I'll do my best.
How does the road race work into the Old Home Day?
Well, that's kind of a separate entity. We don't get the funding from the road race for Old Home Day. And that's, well, you'd probably know more about that than I do, Jerry.
Well, I know in the past, the road race and the Old Home Day kind of worked together on everything.
Mm-hmm,
And I believe last year they just split off.
yes,
And I believe before that, they would donate money to Old Home Day or the phrase, they had extra money, whatever the phrase might have happened to be.
yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore.
No, it's, I don't know what caused it, but it's happened.
So that's a reduction in the revenue you were getting.
Pardon?
That's a reduction in the revenue you had been
Oh,
getting in the
yes,
past.
yeah. So I would appreciate you folks giving it your due consideration. We will be happy to have some solid base to move on with.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Just take a look at what they have, just so Mike knows, it's $7,897.
Is what's
Okay,
in the
thanks.
till?
I didn't even know that. Yeah.
And I was here, so Mike didn't beat me with a golf club.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that.
I don't need a golf club to beat you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jerry.
Thanks, Mike.
Oh, he's coming back.
So I was taken out of order, but that's not non-typical, right? I mean, influence Todd. Can't be conforming to standard. So my gift I brought tonight is our Think Blue Duck. And, the Think Blue Duck is the last item on my, stormwater is the last item on my budget. But it's probably, if you look at the other departments you spoke of, every department has a stormwater
Component.
item, a component, something technical. So I have to give a lot of credit where credit is due to our money people here, who, when I came with a permit that's very perplexing, and I said, hey, everybody's got these different parts, they actually could put the money where it would go in the right columns. We know Todd's the enviro guy, not the money guy. And they worked those components in, so we wouldn't come in with, on year one, some, oh my gosh, we need $1 billion. So we were on a statewide coalition and a smaller Central Mass coalition for this, that the groups have got together and they broke it down into stuff that town administrators do and stuff that technical people like myself do. And I really have to give a lot of credit and thank them for getting this, that side of the house squared away for me. Cause that, that's really not what I do. I'm your duck guy. So, you're gonna start seeing this Think Blue Duck all over the place. I'm really pushing this. This duck is gonna be for the next 10 years, along with our new MS4 permit. You're gonna see it progress. I will be coming in with new line items as this permit progresses. I'm gonna update our capital plan so I can get everybody up to speed with that progression. But I just really wanted to start off tonight with the Think Blue and getting everybody thinking about stormwater across the board, and that this is gonna be every year, we're gonna be coming in and you're gonna hear, hey, this year we're doing testing, next year and in 5 years from now, I'm gonna have to be building things. So, where Jerry was talking about, excuse me, his limited budget, when I'm saying I'm gonna be after building things, as the stormwater person, I'm gonna have Jerry, or have highway department building the stormwater infrastructure. So I just wanted to get you guys ready for another great financial model that we'll get to work on.
That's the $1 billion thing you were just talking about, right?
That's the $1 billion thing, and everybody, just so you don't feel alone, every municipality in the state is gonna have to do this. We're all sitting and saying, hey, how are we gonna do this? So, a lot of it was just figuring out what we were already doing and seeing what box we could apply to the permit, streamline the process. And a lot of what I'm doing is utilizing the resources that we have right up in Worcester. Boy, there's a lot of institutions of higher learning that kids, or I should say students, need technical programs, and we're gonna utilize them for our mapping, our testing, all the science stuff that we can. We're already on board with that. So that's reduced our costs right out of the gate on the technical things.
And on the stormwater, there's no options on that, that's EPA, right?
There is no
Yeah.
option on this. This is EPA mandated, and it's a population-driven permit. So, on our last population study, we added a new section of town. When the census, I don't know how many years they do that, the next time the census comes out and they do the census thing, I know we're gonna add another section of town. So when they add this new section of town, it escalates the requirements exponentially to that area. It's not proportional at all. Yeah, it's this crazy math equation that I'm looking at. So we're really gonna have to come up with some challenging concepts, is what I'd say.
So when you said before, in 5 years you will be, you're saying in 5 years you will have mapped everything out, filed every permit, and then we're gonna have to say, okay, this is the deficiencies we found, and here's where we're gonna have to start funding,
Correct.
in about 5.
And not about in 5.
In
So
5.
it's mandated. So I'm starting my testing now, so they give us a general deficiency, and now we're gonna go out and find an impaired water or some stormwater problem. Once I identify the stormwater problem, I have to take action and fix it. So a lot of the first part of the permit is taking action through education. So education was, we utilized the school system that we already have. We're utilizing all our website. We're utilizing the state to support us with these ducks, getting the information out on to our finance committee that everybody's gonna be watching me discuss this, trying to get that educational level out. The next thing is the mapping and identifying the locations in town. And then the third thing is to come up with a corrective action.
And how much of this has to be done, not by you, but by an engineer, whatever, okay?
So we had, we filed our notice of intent, and then after that, we have our stormwater management plan. And we could go through it line by line. I'd be here forever. It's about that thick. And a lot of it is, some of it is cemetery does it, some of it is conservation does it, DPW does it. So it's specific, for instance, cleaning catch basins. That's DPW cleans them, and then they also do the paperwork on tracking it. But I'd be the person putting it into our yearly report. So it's 3
Gotcha.
different people for one item.
I mean, if this is that expensive a project, is this something we should be setting aside now, funds, like building up an account, so when the day comes? Or is it gonna be phased small enough that it's not gonna take this huge, I hate to see it come and say, hey, I need $250,000.
So I think this year is gonna be one of my years that we're gonna get a better grasp of how much money we need. So we also got our pulse by teaming up with some of the larger communities like Framingham. And they're running their full test set, and then we can utilize, this is through our statewide coalition, we're gonna see what they're running for a test set. And then that should give us a model, and then we can bring it back to us and apply it for us.
See, I'd like to see us, if you can come up with a dollar value, fund it over a 10-year time frame, even if we don't start spending it for 4, versus that same 6-year time frame to come up with the same dollars. It's just,
So we've got WPI kids, students, I gotta keep calling them kids, I gotta retract that. Students working on these projects to look at all the capital investments and which routes and avenues that we're gonna take. And then I've been working with our town administrator, and then soon, we gotta go down and actually crunch numbers to get to that next
Yeah,
level
okay.
that you want.
Yeah.
So I had to get my technical side of the house
Yep.
together before I could get the projections for financial stuff.
okay.
But shy of that, the rest of my budget is fairly well cut and dry. The only fluctuation that I have is dams. We'll have a fluctuation just because we gotta do inspections, and it's an inspection rotation. I actually went down this year on rotations. But we did pick up another dam in town through tax taking, so. we're gonna-
Well, we lucky.
Yeah.
Where was
Maybe
that?
we'll
That's a
sell it,
gift.
I don't know.
Wanna buy a dam?
So, yeah,
Give-
maybe
give me
one by
10,000, I'll
dam.
take it.
So that's gonna, just fluctuate a little bit, and then my other dam stuff that the Department of Dam Safety is coming in is gonna be on a capital, looking at projections for studies, that would be like one of those capital investment things that will come in the fall.
Where was the dam we picked up?
Railroad Pond Dam, so that's over by Ronnie's, is that little pond?
You
Oh,
brought
yeah.
that up last year.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you how you made out with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, the road is actually a dam, and we have a piece on one side and the other side's owned
Right.
by another person. So, we still got a couple years on the permit, it was just inspected, I think, last year, so they're good for a couple years, but I gotta come up with a plan on what we're gonna do with this.
Do we really need that dam?
No, I don't need it at all. I've got fun.
No, I mean, as far as operations and safety and
So these are
all.
all old mill dams, these were all put in back in the day for mill power. And ecologically speaking, the movement is to remove these dams and get free-flowing water and get the riparian systems back to what they originally once were. So,
Good.
in my inner earth being, yeah, I'd like to see go back to what it was. If it stays as an impoundment and we work around it like that and keep the historical aspects of another mill pond in town, I'll work with it like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that was a double sword, but I
Yeah.
always have that with
Yeah.
water, so if I keep it, I keep it, if I don't, I don't. I'll work with it either way.
Any other questions for Todd? Well, thank you very much, Todd. Thank you.
Thanks for the candy.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the
I
candy.
hope you enjoy your support, Ducks.
Double the budget, right there. All right, is there anything else?
You had asked me,
Yeah.
the balances. So I ran, balances as of February 28th. And what I did is I gave you the cash balances. Felt that was the easiest to read. I also, gave you put them in the categories that they belong in.
Thank you, Doug.
And the
Thank you.
Mass General Law that I'm aware of.
Yep.
That they belong to. There's a couple that are blank that I haven't quite mastered what they are. I don't know how many of you watched the selection meeting last night. In general, the rule of thumb is all funds go to the general fund unless there's a law that allows you to put it somewhere else. And the most restrictive one that they have is receipts reserved for appropriation. And the Exxon one required permission, special permission from the Department of Revenue, which Robin had worked on with them, sent them the whole document. That does not have a law out there that was a special permission. There's a new one that came up, I have it also as a special DOR approval. I just don't think the chapter's out there yet, it's a very small amount, it's, you'll see it under, the last item on the receipts reserved for appropriation, and a DPU TNC ride share. It's a very small amount of money, but the state's mandating that the money come back to the cities and towns, and Charlton's share was $192.70. So, like, when you're looking at a lot of these grants, most grants are reimbursable these days, so you have to spend money when you ask for that. There are still some that give you the money up front, but it's becoming more and more rare to see. If you look at the trust funds, I've got them grouped Non-expendable and expendable, you'll see the numbers kind of match. So if you add the two together, that's how much the total is. So 7001 is a non-expendable Colby scholarship, and then it's 8001 with an expendable portion of the Colby scholarship. So you can't spend the non-expendable, you can spend the expendable portion of it. And then there's ones that are just all expendable, and those are like in the 9,000 fund numbers. There are a lot of them that I'm going through, trying to figure out whether they're in the right category. I've been going around, I have to work with the auditor on it. For example, in donations, 1711 and 1712, federal law enforcement trust and state law enforcement trust. I believe they belong in the trust fund section. I understand where the auditor is coming from. They're fully expendable, and he doesn't see fully expendable as trusts under GASB, and I think that's just a reclassification when he does the financial statements, and that under state law they belong in the trust, so that's kind of the discussions that we've been going back and forth on. And there's also ones that have small balances or negative balances that, for example, the highway chapters, I have to work with Jerry on because he doesn't believe that he has any other accounts other than one line. So I have to try to go back in history and find out what happened. More than likely, something was charged to the general fund instead of the highway chapter. But when the money came in reimbursed, it went in there, and I don't think that money's appropriately there, but I have to go back in time and research.
Right off the 6 cents. Well, very good. Thank you very much. That's excellent. Yeah. We'll find old Monday in there.
Yeah, I saw that.
One's 1,000, can't do it, can't use it, but the other one's 1,500. And as long as I've been, they've avoided using that as a last possible resort.
Okay.
So they've been saving it for,
And then the ones on the capital projects, if you see some of those negative, those are just because we haven't borrowed on it very much. And we try to bundle it, so we're only doing one issue at a time on the treasurer side, so we'll be doing that before the end of the fiscal year. And that one's also associated too with, there'll be a betterment on that South Shelton dam, so once that project's finished, you have to time it so that your betterment start coming in at the same time the debt is due.
And if I may, Mr. Chair,
Go for
Donna,
it.
some of these other accounts that show negative balances, 1736 as an example, the grants are obvious, but that one's one that's like a head scratcher.
Yeah, and it was probably, probably doing a project where they're paying for something and sending the bill to
Excellent.
Kleinfeld or somebody.
Oh, it's a Kleinfeld one? Okay,
Pay us
thank you.
back. So you don't usually see it on a donation, you see that happen a lot, and a lot more on grants.
Right.
And then I just wanna point out, so nobody panics, the agency, lease outside detail has $14,000 negative. That's because we pay the officers, bill the company, and the receivable is 16,000, so I know I have that money coming in that covers it.
it's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah.
So it looks like to the, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead. Go for
Question
it.
we asked of the old home day committee, they look like they have almost 8,000, if I'm reading that
Yes,
correctly.
7,800.
7897, okay.
And they have 1,500 in a expendable trust, I guess. They've they've avoided using that, and they plan to use that only as a very last resort when they have to use that, so that's why that hasn't been used.
And then if I may, I have one last question. Shouldn't we show a 1506 for the ambulance receipts? Shouldn't we show pending allocation for next year's budget on that, or how do we
I
record?
haven't put any, allocation for what we're gonna apply.
Okay, thank you.
This is cash, so this is actual.
Yep.
Money in the account.
Okay, okay, so, Robin, anything else you need to go over or anything?
The selectmen have 2 more meetings before I get to post the warrant. So I think that at the next meeting, they should have it finalized. Once that happens, I think you're gonna wanna start having your meetings on exactly what the motions will be for the warrant articles and take your votes. There's a pretty fast window that goes once we hit April and then for May, so, there are a couple of things that you're gonna wanna do. I just, emailed the, public safety building to try and get them to come in at your next meeting, so if they're not at the next, they'll be at the next. They did do a presentation for the Board of Selectmen last night. Maybe kind of putting that off a little bit, so we'll have more accurate information for you. They do have a number of 27 million at this point, and we wanna have a conversation with you about how to find some of these monies and maybe allocate towards them, towards it. I would like to further have a conversation with you about something that you've been talking about, which is, do we take and shift some of the money, ask town meeting to appropriate some funding into a capital that just stays there, so that as we go, if there's a cruiser or something that just needs to be replaced, we'll have some money. I haven't been too concerned about that over the years, because every 6 months we have an ability to go back to town meeting, and you have had a healthy reserve fund. But I know you brought it up again tonight, Mr. Kamasi, so perhaps we should have a conversation about that. We do have some of the Exxon money, we do still have some of the other monies. You can take a look here. Some of the monies that you'll find here cannot be spent for anything, but we may be able to find some. So that's something we should have a conversation about. So what we'll try to do is to pull that conversation in when you start to look at the warrant and get ready and kind of plan for next year.
So if you wanna tentatively put down public safety on April 10th at 7 PM, you're looking, if they can't show, it doesn't hurt that we have them on, and then we would push them to the following meeting if they can't go on again. They also will have policies, we have a number of policies.
Actually, I've got a response, they will be here on the 10th.
Okay. And is that our next meeting? I don't
Yes.
have my schedule with me, so, yeah, that's what I thought,
Yeah, we
okay.
skipped next week.
Yeah, that's what I thought, so, yeah, okay.
So I will aim to also have the warrant and the motions ready for you to start taking a look at.
It's probably more convenient if we have them come on first, and then they can
Well,
hit the
you
road.
have 2 other people coming in.
Like I said, I don't have it with me. All right, so,
6:45.
all right, if you, yeah, put them on the schedule and just send me a copy, then I'll make sure everybody gets it.
6:30 was ZBA,
Okay.
and 6:45 was recreation. They're in the schedule I sent you, yeah?
Yeah, I don't have it with me, so.
Um,
Oh, yes, I do.
Just use leave it up.
That'll be.
Never mind, I have it with me.
Public safety after, because then they can go on, their presentation will go on for a little while,
Yeah,
I think.
And then I'll have policies, hopefully the remaining policies that was in the original DOR report. Plus I'll have a travel policy as well. I'm waiting for comments from the departments right now, beginning of the week, I handed them out to them. So they have until the end of next week to make comments to me. When I come back from vacation, which will be the 9th, I'll send them electronically to Jerry, and if you can just send them out. There's probably five policies and maybe 4 attachments, appendix type attachments that go to it. So there are things in there, these are the harder ones. They're how we do it right now, doesn't mean that that's gonna be the way that we decide to keep it, but for example, indirect costs is defined, it's how it's done right now. I know that, Mr. Lemansky's been questioning on, the process for that. but that, I wanted to document how at least it is right now, so we can get the policy set.
Well, it's hard to change it if you don't know what it is, so.
Right, right.
And I just wanna say thank you to Donna for the work she's done on those policies. She's been really due diligent about getting them ready, getting them out, getting the comments, making the adjustments, and getting them back to you and the board, so.
I also like to say that the accounting system she's been setting up and working on is much better than it was, so. Is there anything else?
Are you going to have a conversation about your joint meeting with the school?
With the school, oh, that one.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
Well, I thought the acting superintendent was very good. She put on an excellent presentation. I thought she was very good at it. I'm not sure where all the money's gonna come from, though. 'Cause I got myself in trouble a couple of times, but it wasn't too bad. One of the things I happen to bring up is, you know, we have a lot of organizations and groups that are taking care of young ladies to help them move into different situations and different jobs. And my only concern was that we're spending a lot of time with that, which is good. But what about all the young boys that are coming up? I don't wanna see them getting left out. I'd like to see them, you know, roughly equal, or equal for that matter. So I brought that up. And the other one was, we talked a little bit about currently, with the college majors people get into, a lot of them pick a major without thinking about how they're gonna pay their own loans back. And I think, not to Senator Goby, but one of the other representatives came back, and they're actually looking at presentations where they could show the students that these kind of degrees and things will generate revenue. With these other degrees, if you want them, it's fine, but you won't generate as much revenue and be able to pay your bills. And they wanna have some educational courses on that, so the kids have a better idea of what they're getting into and how they're gonna pay their own bills. And it's an option. It's not a case of, I don't want you to do this, I want you to do this. No, this is the option. If you do this, this is what happens if you do that. And the kids should know ahead of time, before they pick their majors, what their, you know, responsibilities are gonna be when they're all done, and what their revenues are gonna be. So anyway, I brought that up, and
Well, I will say, I was disappointed that we did not come out of that meeting with a clear understanding amongst everybody about what the override meant,
and that too.
okay? And Jerry brought it up at the very end, and you said it exactly the way I understood it. $1.5 million, $1.5 million. 500 for operating, $1 million for capital, $1,500,000, okay. And I was watching the business manager for the school system, like shaking his head in disbelief that that was your understanding, and then we left, without everybody saying, yeah, Jerry, I either agree with you or no. At the very least, I would have thought they would have said, no, wait a minute, time out, that's not the way we understood it. If they were gonna argue that point, which it sounds like at your meeting with them they did, why not bring it up at that meeting while we were all there? That was the only disappointment I had in the conclusion of that meeting.
We
'Cause
thought
I
they
am
were gonna
still-
bring it up.
Huh?
We thought they were gonna bring it up.
Yeah, we tried
Yeah,
to bring
but
it up, and
Jerry put it right on the table, okay, gave them the opportunity to say, no, that's not what it is, and they didn't. Okay, They didn't. He just sat there shaking his head, rolling his eyes,
Yeah, I watched
and then
him.
walked out the door.
Right.
Now,
So what would you like for your next step? I don't think that we have set up another meeting. One of the things that you've done is have the chairs and co-chairs of each kind of go and sit down and have this conversation with them. I think the big meeting and that kind of atmosphere, and certainly after the hour presentation from the school, I think people were also tired, probably tired and done. But I agree with you that I think the conversation absolutely needs to happen, especially if there's some rewriting of history.
Well, not only was the business director, but two of the people from the school committee were also trying to say that it was only a 2-year.
So
So I
did
think
watch
we
the
need some
selectmen's-
clarification.
I watched the selectmen's meeting, not the FinCom meeting from December, that Rich was here. And said, He talked about it being 3 to 5 years, but he said it was more likely going to be 3 years. That was in
Right.
December of last year. They also gave you a copy of an email that came through when they asked to put the debt ballot question on. It talks about the 3 years. Greg Gusto's explanation was 3 years. And so I did forward that to Robin, so she had that as well. At the time, at that point, it would have gone on the very next night at the selectmen's meeting to be voted to put on. So at the time it was voted to be put on as a ballot question, that was everybody's understanding at that point in time, that it was 3 years.
Yeah, because the other issue that's gonna happen is when does the new superintendent take?
July, so we'll go
July.
through
So
this
he's
full
gonna say,
budget.
I have no clue as to what you guys talked about.
But right, and he's not gonna be here for this year's budget, which I think you really do need to have that conversation. It sounded like they're asking for another, I haven't sat with the number, but another
Right.
$50,000 this year.
Right.
So
Yeah, we
what was
shouldn't be
said
asking
to
for
me
anything.
after that meeting was, we've put it all in the budget already, and we need some more this year. So, what that means, I don't know. I do know that the town administrator in Dudley has the same belief, he said, as we do. And he did ask me to send my numbers of what we put in the budget, because I was clear with the town administrator in Dudley, as well as the school interim superintendent and school business manager, that what we did was we carried over just as we had. And so what their request was, I didn't put it in the budget. So Dudley wanted to know what we had done to put in the budget, and they are matching that. So they're going to do the same as last year. So, you know, that's where you are with your budget at this point. You've had some surprises. Now you have a student that's going to Norfolk Aggie. We thought we weren't gonna have one. Again, you already know that you got hit with $250,000 that you did not expect, in addition from additional assessment from BayPath. So I think you gotta have a conversation about where this is going. So my suggestion would be perhaps that the chairs reach out and try and get that meeting, or if there's other people that wanna be a part of it, that we at least get that meeting together.
And when could we do that? Could you set it up?
If you would request us to do that, we would be glad to initiate that. I didn't see that anyone else was going to do it.
No,
Well, I
no,
think-
not to be confrontational, okay, but I would like to see us make the point now, and we're having this discussion, we've all said, okay, here's our take of that meeting, here's what we believe. I'd like to see us write a letter saying, at this meeting, we discussed it, we want to put forward our point. We believe this, 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 and this, and send it to the school, and let them defend it, okay? Let them defend where they believe, and let them prove that it was they thought it was a 2-year deal.
They never thought that.
I mean, I did find the public information sessions that they did, Investor did, they did present as a 2-year option, 2
To who?
years.
I
As-
actually,
So,
I looked at that, and that was what Rich had brought out. But I
because,
think if you look at it, it talks about the year, and then it goes, and the future 2 years, which would have been 3 years, because there's the year they're talking about, and then that slide that says going forward 2 years.
Right. And they illustrate,
That's the 3 years,
they illustrate the
but-
20 and 21 budget, you're right,
Yeah.
Robin.
Yeah,
Right. So, you're absolutely right, and that might be what's causing some confusion.
I'm just saying, let's put our stake in the ground right here, right now, and make them defend, instead of getting in a room and arguing about it, okay? And say, and here's, and maybe that letter has addendums that say, we'll back it up, if you've got some report, Tony, that says, this is why we believe this, and I've got an email, or you got an, whatever. Let's put our case together and send it off and make them defend. I'm just saying, let's be a little more offensive about it.
all right, if you want to do that. The board in favor? I mean, committee in favor of doing a letter like that?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Can you write it? I'm a lousy writer, so.
I'll give it my best shot.
All right. All right, can you set up a meeting then?
No,
We-
let's write the
we-
letter.
We'll write the letter
Let
and
let
send it to
them
them.
request a meeting from us saying,
All right.
hey, we don't believe what you said,
All right,
okay?
okay, you can write it up,
Mhm.
and we'll take a look at it, and then we'll go from there. Anything else we can get in trouble on?
I figured you had nothing better to do, Robin, than not defend us, okay? So you'll give you another thing. The only other thing I would like to see us bring up today, the one request that we had that wasn't on here is going back to the planning board. And can we talk about the stipend and why it is out of whack? I don't buy their argument about the water and sewer. That's totally different kind of.
That's an enterprise fund.
That's an
and
enterprise
they-
fund. So-
they're more in charge of their budget
Right.
than the general fund.
So, are they in fact out of whack with other boards here in town?
At the next, let us pull it all together and resend it to you. I know that we've given you what they all are. I don't know it off the top of my head. You could also look at the budget and just see where everybody is quick. They seem to be all over the place with the stipends, and I know that the person who was trying to pull us together has had some health issues
Okay.
recently, so I know when I had talked to him, I had said, if you don't get it done for now, then we can look at it in the fall.
Because they're talking to a board that doesn't get anything.
I know.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, but we're a committee, they're a
Yeah,
board.
yeah.
They're elected,
And
we're
I
not.
can tell you that the board from Oxford, where I came from, the planning board and the finance committee does not get stipends. There's quite a few boards actually that don't get stipends in Oxford. I was kind of surprised when I saw all the stipends coming through. I'm like, are you kidding me?
It would seem like this would be something to put off until they get that committee together with stipends and review everything. Otherwise, I don't want to get into this spot zoning type of thing where you're picking this one or that one.
Right. Yeah, and that's all I was looking for, is some discussion, are they in fact, the lowest on the totem pole? Here we got, taking water and sewer out.
Can't tell my budget because you don't know how many people are on the board. Well, I don't, so.
You have to go back to their details.
Yeah, that doesn't really tell it. It might say $1,000 stipend, but if there's only 2 people, they each get 500.
We
So
can put that together for you.
Yeah, I'm
All right,
curious.
that'd be good.
What it's for.
At least give them a shot at, they made a point, let's research it
Yeah.
and make sure that we're on the right page. And, there are other requests for the legal, that, to me, that's a selectmen's issue. Okay?
Right.
Let them decide who represents them when. I don't think we should be making that.
My comment on that would be, it depends on if it's a financial discussion or if it's a legal discussion. This board gets sued, what would we do?
The finance committee?
Right.
We'd go to town council.
And they say no. Now what do you do? It's a hypothetical
Yeah,
question.
I know it's
But are you
hypothetical.
comfortable
Okay.
performing your job? And it's a much longer question and a much deeper debate.
Right.
If it's a financial thing, then we can solve it. If it's a who's got jurisdiction issue, we can't solve it. You put $100,000 in their budget, they can't spend it if they don't have the permission from Board of Selectmen, then it doesn't matter that it's in their budget.
Yeah.
Right? So, I'm not sure if funding it makes a difference.
Yeah, and I'm not in favor of funding it, because I don't believe that we're the right people to be saying that they get legal representation, so.
Well, then
I
you're
don't
gonna
know.
have every department asking
Yeah.
for it.
Exactly.
including myself.
Yeah, that's really,
Can you put that in my budget too?
Yeah. Right, no, I agree with you there, though.
And it has been working.
Yeah.
I mean, this year, things happened, the board
Extraordinary
wanted time to
circumstances.
look at strategy, they never said no. And they've made sure that nothing's happened bad, so
Okay.
it's working.
No, I'm more interested in the stipends than I am in giving them legal representation.
one last thing that I've got, this was from the Public Building Safety Committee. I think you guys have seen it. It's the latest, and it's the only one that actually has a first rendition, and that's exactly what it is. So if you want to look at that, I'm not sure who's seen it, who hasn't, but.
That's what I wanted to ask the chief of police, how come he wasn't on the news last night? Fire chief.
Oh,
You
the
didn't see
fire
it?
department Robbie Barton is, hosting kind of covering the Facebook page. So that's,
last night's Charter 3 news article. Did you see
so
it?
that's how they came in, was through the fire department's Facebook page, is what. what happened.
Because it was a pretty good clip, but it wasn't, it was the fire chief, but not the police chief, I just,
And do remember that this started because we really do need to replace the fire station, and that's one of the biggest needs. We've kind of said, well, let's move the police to that, because we know that, or we believe that we'll save money in the long run by doing this now, and we need more space.
And that's a mobile document. As we've started out, it's somewhere around 46,000 square feet. That was just gross, what they had, gross with this. Then you get common areas. Went down to, I thought it was 38, but maybe down to 37.5. And at the last meeting, even at that, they were looking at combining some more things too. So that's just a rendition, but it gives you an idea of what it is. That's what they're working with. But until they laid the interior out and what they needed for space and where they had to put things, you really can't put an outside on the building until you know what you're doing. So just general information. If there's nothing else, do I hear a, go ahead.
Just for Robin to clarify.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I did watch last night's selectmen's meeting, but I got interrupted with a phone call. Did I hear right, the new the marijuana facility on 20 is expected to open about a month or so?
So we have three.
Well,
that
the
we're
one by
talking
McDonald's.
about. The one by McDonald's?
Yes.
I believe that's what they said.
Okay, so we'll finally start seeing
What-
revenue, right?
I know about VJ&J. What, well, which one's the other one?
My understanding is that one of the holdups was the DOT entering into the parking lot.
Right, that I
and the
meant, they
driveway.
mentioned they need
And Deb
cuts.
did report out from the marijuana advisory committee that that has been solved, so it sounds like they're just moving forward.
Do we know, I should have asked, I'm sorry, Jerry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I should have asked the chief. Do we know what their off-site plan is in busing? Is it in town?
It is in town, but I couldn't quote you. I've heard more rumors than seen a plan, so I'd
Okay.
rather not.
yeah, I thought I read something or heard something at CVS.
I
Busing from
don't-
CVS down, that's what I heard. But
When
isn't
are they
that,
gonna park the other
that's a
1,000
medicinal,
cars?
that's a medicinal only, right?
Okay.
I thought it was
That's
in
both.
front of Kamasi's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's all up, it's all up to Charlie Crossing.
I got plenty of, but I thought that was a medicinal only, right now.
They
Yeah,
are,
initially.
that is correct. They are
Because then
going to
it-
open as medical.
Right.
It'll be less traffic, they'll be able
Right.
to kind of gauge,
Yeah.
and then they're hoping to move forward. I believe they might need to go to planning, for site plan review to make that transition, so, it won't happen
Yeah. I
kind
was
of.
gonna say, because when Lester opened up as a medicinal, they did not have that traffic issue. It was when it was recreational,
day.
and so
Yeah.
I think that,
It was also Black Friday.
yeah,
Big mistake.
And there was only two of them.
Right
Right,
next to
right.
Walmart.
right. And, yeah, I don't think we're gonna see the traffic issues on this one that they had in Lester, because it is medicinal.
What's the I know VJ, what's the other one, the third one?
Fourscore,
Fourscore.
which is on Route 20, also down past by Treehouse down that end.
I mean,
But that's cultivation,
Yeah,
that is
it's-
not, that is not retail.
Oh, okay. So they
Although
only,
they are seeking a retail, if one becomes available.
so we,
So let me just
The other
give you
one is
some,
right at the end of, excuse me, right at the end of 169,
Mhm.
right across the street, right? Somewhere in that neck of the woods is
It's an
another
existing
cultivation facility?
it is an it used to be an auto parts, it's a big red building.
Big
I
red
think,
brick.
down
wrote that out.
Right.
there. Cabins or something.
oh, I'll figure it out.
Where are you going? Are you gonna be the first one in line?
I don't do anything.
Well, wasn't there one city where the mayor got in the front of the line and said, I think I should be first, just because?
Yeah, that works,
I
yeah,
think it was just a cut in the line.
yeah.
Well, the one that just opened in Boston, they were too.
Were they?
Yep. And they showed what he bought. It was great, I was like, oh my God, they're actually showing what he bought.
Don't think that's a good, that's my opinion, I don't think it's a good idea. That's up to other people.
What I'll also do is, I don't think I've given you financials. I did do a spreadsheet, which was teeny tiny for the Board of Selectmen, and I did email it. I'm not sure if I gave it to you, so what I'll do is try for your next meeting to, at least show you what some anticipated revenue for the ones that already have their host agreements and what's happening with that.
And one last question. Any update on the appeal for solar? Do we, and/or do we expect a ruling soon?
I think we're going next week to the ATB. I have it in my calendar. So I would think in the next 2 weeks, we should hear something, or at least get a feel. So,
And if it goes against us, do you have an idea what the impact would be on us financially?
Deb said $1 million, that was her estimate. But I think she was also including the proposed, the ones that are coming on, so I think the immediate issue might be 600,000. These are the numbers that I think I remember her saying.
And that would not be retroactive, would it, if they said?
Could.
It could.
It wouldn't go, I think it's maybe a 2-year.
Depends on when they first started filing.
Right.
I think they'll go back to that time frame.
But there is a statute of
They
limitations, how
have to,
far they can
yeah.
go back.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it could break us if it went back to day one.
Well, I think it's inappropriate for the taxpayers of the town of Charlton to supply a company like that that's generating revenue. If the whole state wants to do it, and I'm opposed to that too, but if the whole state, but have 1 or 2 or 3 towns absorb these kind of costs when their product is for the state and other states for that matter, wherever they sell their power, most inappropriate. I don't have a vote on it, but.
Well, I think that people in the town of Charlton call legislators, call the Department of Utilities, tell them they need to fix this. You know, there's a committee, a group that's been active, the assessors have been active, I've been active up at the MMA. You know, we've been kind of hammering at our own legislators, but they need to hear how serious this is, so any calls can help light the fire.
Do you have a contingent, I'm sorry, Jeff, do you have a contingency plan if all of a sudden we lose $700,000?
We won't lose it. What it'll happen, unfortunately, is it will get redistributed throughout everyone else.
Right,
So it doesn't go away.
Right, so for town meeting, I think it's vital, if we lose, it's vitally important that the taxpayers understand that they just voted another 2.5 override without ever voting.
Yeah.
Because that's the equivalent amount that's gonna get assessed back to them for the free ride the solar team, that all the solar farms are gonna get.
And I don't know how much, you know, what kind of pressure, how it might help to speak with the landowners and have conversations with them.
Well, I do know that there's on the warrant, there's an article, zoning article about solar. So at least makes it a little bit more stringent, not completely, but just put some more, some more guidelines around it, and ultimately makes Charlton a little less attractive than we today with no guidelines around it. And so I want people to understand, hey, next time your neighbor says, I'm gonna put a solar farm in, go, gee, thanks for this bill.
So what you also may want to do is reach out to Lori Dagan. She's, I think she's heading the committee.
Yep.
They have worked with the planning board, they have a warrant article. So as we start going through the warrant articles, to have her come and explain it, and that would be good for you to hear where they're going with solar and what they're seeing, because I think they've been really focused on this for a while. And on most of the zoning things, you've just left it to the planning board's recommendation. Maybe some of these you might want to weigh in on and take a vote to support or not to support.
And I know this is gonna sound like a super controversial question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Do we have the option of not holding ourselves harmless?
What does that mean?
In other words, Donna's saying no. Why?
Because that's already built, it's already built in the tax base, so what's gonna happen is that value is gonna be removed, and your levy's gonna be divided by the value and come up with a new rate.
The only way you could do it is an underwrite.
You'd have to underwrite your override.
Right, okay.
So it would be like a large building that burnt down, we would lose that, because it would go from a $2 million building to, 200,000 for a piece of plain land. That would get absorbed somewhere else.
And in that case, we would lose 600,000, 700,000 with an underwrite.
You'd have to cut your budget.
Right, you'd have
You'd
to
have
cut
to
the
cut the
budget,
budget,
right,
right.
right.
Right, but the question was, do we have the option of not going through that process, but saying, I don't feel it's appropriate to pass that on to the taxpayers.
It would seem
Be
like,
painful, but it would be an option, but if we don't,
It
then we
sounds
don't.
like the underwriters.
Well,
will-
I think you're gonna get in line, because I think the school's coming back too, so I think you're gonna probably wanna look at all of the potential hits to your budget right now.
Yeah.
They're saying they're coming back, even if you could get them to agree to the 3 years, they said after the 3 years were done, they're absolutely coming back for
I
increases.
think that was a given,
Yeah,
right?
we
Yeah.
all knew that was coming.
well, they get $1.5 million every year anyway, that was part of the deal, but how they spend it is what we were debating. You know, it was 500, $1 million, and so the first year was 500 in capital, and $1 million, and 500 in capital, and the last year was
All operating.
all operating, and after that, it's all
Yeah, but
operating.
Jerry, that was just our understanding.
That's
It
our
doesn't
understanding.
sound like that was the actual reality.
It sounded like they
Right.
decided it wasn't quite what they wanted to
Right.
do and
Right.
changed their own mind and didn't tell anybody, but I didn't say that.
Well, and again, that's,
Well, it
the
sounded
general
like,
fund is the general fund,
Yeah.
excuse me, the general fund is the general fund, right? The override, we've committed as a town to give that override money to the schools.
Mm.
Okay, I mean, I've supported schools my entire life. In this case, I feel like I was duped.
in that case, yeah, I have
This
to agree with you.
conversation was for 3 years, and all of a sudden you decided to burn that in 2. Okay,
And they want more in the second year.
And they want more in the second.
and we're in the
Yeah.
second year, and they want more now.
They told us they wouldn't be back for 3.
Right, so forget 3, we're not even honoring the 2.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah. they
It's
want
like,
me.
really? I think you got the wrong number. But, just my opinion.
No, you're right.
It seemed like if we had a good tax increase from some facility, it would be very convenient right at this time.
Oh, don't even go there, Bill. Don't even go there. I make a motion, we adjourn before he says anything else.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So adjourned, and it's 8:40.